The San Francisco 49ers definitely have one of the most stacked rosters inside the whole entire NFL, but here's the thing, their quarterback room is still kind of questionable. Their two starters from last year, Trey Lance and Brock Purdy, both are coming off serious injuries. They also signed Sam Darnold, who seems to be a fit for the 49ers, but only time will tell what role he actually plays. But this video is about what Brock Purdy said about the 49ers and his chances to play recently. During a recent interview with Yahoo Sports, Purdy was asked if he would be able to play during the upcoming season, and he confessed that he was not really sure, honestly. And as a 49ers fan, that's definitely not what you want to hear out of your quarterback. There are some other positive notes he discussed during this interview that a lot of people aren't talking about. He said that he's on schedule for his rehab and that things are going well and as expected. And that's something that's really positive considering before this surgery, it wasn't even known that he'd be able to have an internal brace, and that drastically reduces the amount of time that he'd have to actually spend away from the sport compared to his surgery like Tommy John, which would take at least a year. Another encouraging sign is that Purdy showed up for off-season workouts on Monday this week. And this shows that Purdy is actually progressing extremely well during his rehab, because if he was delayed for any reason, he would probably stay in Arizona where he's been stationed throughout his rehab process. Purdy discussed his plan to return to the facility for off-season workouts with The Athletic, and the conversation went as follows. Just being back around the guys, continue my rehab, and get after the playbook. So it'll be simple in that regard. There was also optimism for Purdy, discussing his ability to start moving his arm more and more. And he can also start working out his lower body and conditioning. An insightful quote to recap his process was, "But for the most part, everything is going as planned, and every week I feel like I'm getting better." But this seems to contradict what Purdy said earlier in this video, which was that he wasn't actually honestly sure if he'd be able to play during the 2023 season. So what is the message that Purdy actually wants to get across? And I don't think it's a case of Purdy really not being careful with his words. He seems like he's pretty careful on what he actually says. So this is my hypothesis on these mixed messages that Purdy has been sending to the 49ers and kind of the fan base. So first of all, by saying that he may not be ready for the 2023 season, I think that's a way of sending a message to the 49ers coaching staff that he's not going to rush anything that isn't good for him. Because in the long run, he realizes this is just a business. And there's been countless times in the NFL where teams have just rushed a player back to only end their career prematurely. And Purdy taking the step of actually taking the long road and making sure he rehabs correctly is an encouraging sign for 49ers fans, because even if he's not able to play in the 2023 season, he will be able to be back on the field. And him showing up to these off-season workouts and just trying to be around his team and saying that everything's progressing as planned is just to assure fans and his teammates and the coaches that he is doing everything in his power. But if at the end of the day he isn't ready, and he's not going to push himself past that point. As I mentioned earlier in this video, Purdy is expected to start throwing in June, and while that doesn't mean he's going to be fully ready to go, is an encouraging sign that he probably will be able to start at some point during the 2023 season. And that brings me to the next point in this video. If we're to compare all three quarterbacks on the 49ers roster currently, which one should actually start? And a way to summarize this competition in a way is unrealized potential versus almost fully realized potential in the case of Brock Purdy. I don't know. Everyone's saying that Brock Purdy is at his ceiling, where Trey Lance isn't anywhere near his ceiling. And maybe Sam Darnold still isn't close to his ceiling because he has played on such horrible teams that have had depleted talent around him. And the first quarterback competition that will actually be solved in the 49ers training camp is most likely the competition between Trey Lance and Sam Darnold. And Kyle Shanahan said this would be an open competition. So I don't know what that exactly means for Trey Lance, if he's going to get the first whack at it at least, because he did lose his job due to injury. And another part about this that will be interesting is to see the development of Trey Lance, especially since there's been videos of Trey Lance working out with Patrick Mahomes. His spiral also looks a lot tighter. His release looks to be higher up. His whole motion is higher up and quicker. It's pretty amazing to see his progress in those aspects. Couple those positive traits with the 49ers giving up so much to get him, and him really only playing a handful of games for the 49ers, I don't see how the 49ers can justify starting Sam Darnold over Trey Lance. But Sam Darnold does have a ability to overthrow Trey Lance. He was doing fantastic towards the end of the year for the Panthers and put up some of the best numbers in his whole entire career. So that bodes well for him. And he also knows Steve Wilks, who actually probably was pretty influential in bringing him in, or as you guys may know him, the new defensive coordinator for the 49ers. Trey Lance also has been studying this offense pretty nonstop for 2 whole years, meaning this 3rd year, Trey Lance should definitely have the whole entire offense down to a T. And Sam Darnold's kind of starting out from nothing. So for all these reasons, I see Trey Lance initially beating out Sam Darnold and being the first team quarterback. That is until Brock Purdy comes back. And here's where it gets a little iffy. It kind of depends on how the season's going for Trey Lance. If it's the first game and Brock Purdy comes back that week, he might start the first game and then Brock Purdy takes the job the second game and onwards. But if Trey Lance is in the season 3 or 4 games, I wonder how the team is going to react to Brock Purdy coming back. If Trey Lance has done well for those games and won them all, I'm sure it's going to be much more of a competition and Brock Purdy will need to prove a little bit more. But Brock Purdy already proved a bunch by winning those playoff games. Another thing about Brock Purdy is he's probably a lot more elusive than Trey Lance within the pocket, which is huge for a quarterback and probably means a little bit more than Trey Lance's ability to be a better runner than Brock Purdy. Another thing that Brock Purdy has over Trey Lance is the amount of experience he has. Even NFL experience, Brock Purdy has more at this point, and he's had a lot of college experience that you could see on the field meant a lot to Brock Purdy and his ability to read and process what the defense was trying to do to him and how to accurately distribute the ball to his playmakers. And while I praise Trey Lance's mechanics in this video, Brock Purdy is a little bit further ahead than Trey Lance as mechanics. But all of this is contingent on Brock Purdy being able to successfully rehab his torn UCL. And if he's able to do that, it appears like the sky's the limit for him, and it was tremendous watching him play as a 49er last year. But those are just my thoughts on Brock Purdy's controversial statements, and I would love to hear your thoughts down below. It would also mean a ton if you guys would subscribe, like, and share this video. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate all the support.